programmers, how are you doing? Welcome back. Today I want to talk a little bit about Lisp. Lisp is a very simple language that kept me puzzled for so many years. Because if you think about that, Lisp is mostly used in universities by university professors, so they are teachers. So you would suppose that, okay, if this language is mostly used by teachers, so the learning material is very good, so people are masters in explaining concepts to people, and that's not the case for Lisp. It's so baffling how bad most guides and books and articles about Lisp are. They're terrible. They're terrible, so difficult to understand what these guys are talking about, like they just started dumping a lot of information and doing a lot of stuff, like to stop doing things. I want to learn the syntax, I want to learn the concepts, I want to learn the basics of the language, but most of the material I faced in my life about Lisp, most of that is garbage. It's trash, is the worst. You can't understand anything about Lisp. So it was kind of frustrating to me, like I've been working with software for 20 years, and maybe am I dumb, am I stupid? I can't understand, or I believe the guides are super bad, because I learned a lot of other languages except Lisp. Lisp was always quite difficult for me. So I want to help you to start, because Lisp is actually so simple, It's powerful in building macros, etc. But in general, like the concepts are so simple. Like everything is a list, and Lisp is going to execute each list, and that's it. Like it's a list with like A, B, C. A is the comment, B, C are the parameters, as you would expect. It's looking like comments inside parentheses, Like it's a comment parameters, inside parentheses is execute, that's it. But then you have like the sigils, the hash maps and lists and arrays, etc. So depending on which language you're using, so maybe you're starting with Common Lisp, maybe you're starting with Scheme, maybe you're trying Emacs Lisp. There's a lot of differences, and so my recommendation for you to start working with Lisp is this small language called Janet. Janet is a very small language, very easy to use, with very useful stuff included, and that's great, because another issue I have with both Lisp and functional languages in general is that the examples people give you are always like, Fibonacci sequence, or the summatory of these numbers, or like why would I try to recreate the Fibonacci sequence? Like Fibonacci sequence is downloadable. You download an index and you use that to get Fibonacci numbers. The same with any sequence. Nobody should be implementing sequences like a Fibonacci sequence. That's stupid. So instead of giving like real life good examples, like, okay, you're going to open this file, parse the JSON, and do an HTTP request and get the response and print things to user, and that's it. Like do very simple example, very useful things, very useful concepts, like open file, validate, handle errors, parse the contents, do a request, get the response, take a look at the response, and get items from, like instead of giving us like useful stuff, they usually go with arithmetical examples, like it's useless. So don't do that. If you want to teach someone like a functional language, find useful examples. Janet, very small language, run on Linux, macOS, Windows, BSDs, because it's very simple. The entire language, core, interpreter, compiler, and expression grammars is less than 1 megabyte. It's quite cool. There's a lot of interesting features here, like the one binary. Yeah, I love that. Like, okay, it's one binary. You don't have to worry too much about, copying all these files from the standard library. Python. I'm looking at you. Built-in support for threads, networking, event loop, garbage collection, okay. Green threads, interesting. Macros, of course, it's a Lisp. Tail call optimization, nice. This direct interrupt with C is amazing. You have dynamically load C libraries too. So what that means is that you can load a shared object and call functions inside that without writing C code. You don't have to do that glue code that's going to load the shared object and find the function, call the function, link with the header files, etc. Oh no, you don't need to do that. Of course, you're still defining how the function is, like you're saying, oh, this is the name of the function, the parameters, the types, the return the type, etc. You have to do this definition of what's going on. But after that, Janet is going to call the function and use that as simple as it looks, So you don't have to write C code. You can write your wrapper or your function caller from a shared object directly in Janet instead of having to write glue code. And it's so cool, so amazing. More languages should implement this kind of thing. There's a REPL, and that's quite nice. You have parsing expression grammars, and I was playing with that, and it's quite good and easy to use. It's very, very simple to get a simple format like I don't know, ini files, and parse that and retrieve values. It's so easy that you're going to do that ad hoc a lot, because so simple, so easy. And you can export these projects to standalone executables. It's going to compile your program, and you can distribute that easily. And that's quite nice. Code example again. Threesome problem, and you're like, okay. Modules and libraries. So there's a HTTP server for Janet. Nice. There's a web framework. Nice. A JSON parser. Nice. SQLite. Nice. WebView. Okay. Bindings to Raylib. Nice. Raylib is so amazing. I love Raylib. It's best lib ever. There's cryptography for Janet. Nice. And bindings to libui. Libui is I don't know. So there's this link in the end for Janet docs, and there's this link in the beginning for documentation. So documentation is the manual of the language, and Janet docs is this place, janetdocs.com, where you have the examples for each part of the language. It's kind of lacking usually, like the examples are good, but not that good. The good thing is that you can sign in and add your own examples, so I hope the community grows and do that. And that's it. So to start with Lisp, I'm going to try to explain you a very simple concept that nobody was able to explain to me in like clear English ever. And that's the fact that everything's a list. So when you are using a shell, you do this ls/opt, okay? So you have this command parameters, right? And dash, lh, etc. So command parameter. In Lisp, you do that, but you do that with a list, like something like this. Okay, so you have to put your comments in parentheses. So it is a list, okay? It is a data structure. And it's not like simply syntax. This is the definition of a list. And Lisp, all Lisps are going to execute the lists automatically. And that's the thing. So there's no specific syntax for running a command. The syntax to running a command is the syntax to define a list. And lists are actually this, like ABCD, a list of items, the data structure is what is used to define the commands of the language, or the function calls, or whatever you prefer to call. And that's interesting because you can say def lista, and we are going to define a list, okay? A list like a data structure, not commands. How do you do that? Like the syntax is this, okay? So A, B, C. However, it's going to give you like unknown symbol, like I can't find this comment because A does not exist, okay? It's not a function. So there's this concept of quoting. and you will quickly learn that Lisp is full of sigils, like these small letters that go before data structures, etc. There's the at symbol, the quote, the quasi-quote, etc. So if you want a list to be simply a list, to not be executed, you use the quote. This concept is so simple, and it took so long to me to understand that, and it's kind of frustrating, to be honest. So the second thing is that sometimes you have like this example of a list with many items, but for instance, the next item you want to gen next item. You want to call a command inside the list that's supposed to be a regular list, not an executable part of your code. In this way, you're going to get like you're not executing the gen command in this case, right? So how do you do that? So in Janet you have the quasi-quote. That's the tilde character, but the idea is that you can, you see, it's the same thing, but you can unquote, Now, yeah. So what's unquoting is, the quote is the upper part of the line, and then you move that to the bottom, so you're unquoting. It's like the opposite. There's the quote, you're saying do not execute this, and you have this, it's actually a comma, but it's like a quote, move it to the bottom of the line. You're saying, no, do the opposite of the quote. I want you to execute this command. But you have to do that inside a quasi-quote list, because otherwise, you see, it's going to quote the entire thing. So this concept of quoting is make that regular data structure, do not execute nothing inside that. And nothing sometimes is too much, and you want some things. So instead of using the quote, you're going to use the quasi-quote. Some other implementations of Lisp call that semi-quote. I know Emacs Lisp call that the backtick, back quote. They use the backtick. But Janet uses the tilde character as a sigil for quasi-quote. So yeah, it's giving me an error because this command gen does not exist, but the idea is that is try to execute this, okay? So yeah, Janet is very simple, very easy to understand. If you want to learn more about, for instance, more advanced topics like macros, this tutorial here in Janet is good enough. It's going to teach you how to work with macros. Don't go too deep into that. Probably for most part you won't have to define any macros in your first, small programs, so don't worry too much about that. And that's it. If you go to janetlang.org, you're going to find this. It's a quite good implementation of Lisp, very interesting. It's easy to embed that into a C program, so yeah, and you can compile your program and distribute as one single binary instead of forcing your user to install Janet and then run your program. You can distribute your program as one binary, one executable, so it's quite cool. And as I said, you have like HTTP server, web server, you have JSON parser, Raylib, so yeah, pretty rich that, and the community created plugins and modules, packages, etc. So yeah, that's my recommendation for today. Thank you for your time. See ya.